I can keep enjoying it, keep travelling, keep meeting new people, have new people enjoy my music, to me that's the ultimate goal. I just want to create and keep going. Certainly my first experiences of performing live are ones of sheer terror. I'd be sweating, you'd be hyper focused on the performance. And yeah, I still love performing everywhere and anywhere. Just love it. I played the Royal Albert Hall in 2018. I remember the last song we played, and I remember thinking, Matt, you're probably never going to be playing this ever again, so enjoy it while you can. So I was very aware of myself in those last sort of 5 minutes of that show, because I wanted to remember this moment.
Welcome to the Cheers and Strings podcast, the show where I talk to musicians about what's happening within the local music scene, as well as listening to some of their original music. So today my guest is MG Boulter. He's a musician from the South End area. He's got a really unique sound and he's got real insight into the songwriting process. We'll have a chance to listen to some of those songs a little bit later. I hope you enjoy it. Okay, so Matthew, thank you very much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Sam.
Yeah, not a problem. So we recorded some of your music earlier, some really great stuff, really enjoyed that. And we'll give some of that a listen in just a bit. But before we get into that, could you just take me back to when you first got into music and what first inspired you to start performing?
Yeah, I think probably my earliest memory was when I was about 11, and I had a friend and he had 3 older brothers. So we used to go round his house, and his sort of the next brother up was about 16, and he had this bedroom and it was sort of painted black and it had lots of heavy metal band posters on the wall, and he had a guitar. And I think that was probably, reflecting on it, probably the first time I felt I was I'd entered a realm that I really liked. There was something enticing, the inner sanctum. And then I think really from there, I bought a guitar. I got a guitar when I was about 12. And really it was from a social perspective, just wanted to be in a band with my friends. And then the love just grew from there. And I think, as you get older, you get exposed to different bands, things on TV, different records, and I just fell deeper and deeper into my love of music.
So how did that then transition into the performing side of things?
Yeah, I suppose I was quite late to performing. I did a Battle of the Bands when I was sort of 15, but I wasn't really in a band that performed per se until I was probably in my early 20s, so it was quite late in the day for me. But yeah, I just had to get to a level where I felt comfortable singing and performing, and of course as soon as I did it, I was bitten by the bug. It was your first sort of experiences. Certainly my first experiences of performing live are ones of sheer terror. I'd be sweating, you'd be hyper focused on the performance, and then you'd do it and you'd get this exhilaration. And I still get that nerves and various things, but it's a lot less now. You have strategies to deal with it. And yeah, I still love performing everywhere and anywhere. Just love it.
Yeah. So what would you say your favourite type of performance is? Because I know you do a lot of theatre gigs, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think every type of performance, every type of venue has its... there are good things and bad things about it. And you, as a performer, I think musicians have to change the way they perform in certain areas and certain realms. So, if you're playing a loud club or a pub, you perform differently. You can play maybe perhaps a bit more of a relaxed style. Whereas in theatres, everyone is completely concentrated on you. Yeah. I really like any venue. I think what's really important is the quality of the sound. So you can play a small venue, large venue, theatre, a basement club, whatever it is. But if it's got a really good sound system, you can hear yourself and there's a quality to the sound, then the performance is enjoyable. So for me, I wouldn't say there's a particular size or type of venue. It's just the quality of the sound. Although I have played some really nice venues that stick in my mind as really beautiful places to play.
Yeah. Do you have any specific that you'd like to mention?
Well, I suppose I played the Royal Albert Hall in 2018.
Wow, really?
I was supporting Paul Heaton from the Beautiful South, and he'd invited me on tour, and we played at various city halls and venues around the country. And the last night was at the Royal Albert Hall, and I mean that was a really special place to play because of all the history. And the sound was phenomenal. You know, it was a really, really beautiful, enjoyable experience.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, it must have been. When that happened, when you performed that gig, would you say that there was a moment where you were like, "Wow, I've arrived almost"?
I never feel I've arrived. I mean, if people want to know, the reality was we got there. I was with my my bass player Paul, and we got there. And anyone who knows that part of London, notorious for parking. So we get there, we get to the security desk, and we say, "We're playing tonight. Where can we park?" And they said, "Sorry, all the car park's full." So we, you know, regardless of whether you're playing the Royal Albert Hall, we still had to find a parking space on the street, which took about 30 minutes. Yeah. So I don't think we'd quite arrived, but there was an element of. I remember we had 25 minutes, and I remember the last song we played, and I remember thinking, Matt, you're probably never going to be playing this ever again, so enjoy it while you can. So I was, you know, I was very aware of myself in those last sort of 5 minutes of that show because I wanted to remember this moment. Yeah. But yeah, it's just a gig. I know it sounds silly, but every gig is it's just another show that you need to win people over. Yeah. And some of those bigger shows are actually harder because the audience don't know you, are not there for you, and you know, so you have to break that barrier. You have to go an extra mile at those shows to kind of connect the people there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, what would you say your ultimate goal is in terms of like your music and what you're trying to achieve?
Wow, that is a deep question, Sam.
Yeah. So, in terms of, would you say it's something that you do for yourself, for like personal satisfaction? Is it something you like to put something out there for other people to listen? What would you say? Yeah.
I think it's a bit of both, and I think it's changed over the years. I think if you'd asked me that 20 years ago, I would have been like, well, I want to do this, and I want to be here, and I want to be touring the world. And the older you get, the more the reality seeps in about yourself as an artist, as a musician, as a creative. And I think for me, it's doing it. The things I love are, I love travelling and performing, and I love going to new places and seeing those new places. I love performing in front of new people and meeting new people. So the community of music lovers and people that I meet brings me joy. And when people say that they like my music and they use it and they enjoy it in their lives, that's really important as well. So if I can just keep doing that, that's my ultimate goal. If I can keep enjoying it, keep travelling, keep meeting new people, have new people enjoy my music, to me that's the ultimate goal. I just want to create and keep going.
Yeah, sounds fantastic. Yeah. So in regards to some musicians that have influenced you, do you have any specific people in mind that you would say were big influences growing up?
Yeah, I think so. I obviously grew up playing guitar, and most white young men in Essex, which is where I'm from, it's all about the rock and roll. So I was really inspired by sort of rock guitarists when I was a lot younger. So my big influences were sort of Rory Gallagher, because I just loved his guitar playing, and I loved, you know, that beaten up old guitar and that sort of ethos. Big fan. But then I was a big fan of songwriters like Bob Dylan, Neil Young. I was a big fan of, and I really liked the words. And then when I was about 18, I started getting into Nick Cave and things that Nick Cave was writing about. I felt, oh, you can't really say that. How, you know, there was a freeing element to his music, and Patti Smith as well. And sort of my breadth of musical inspiration has sort of gone on from there. I love classical music, folk music. I love medieval choral music. Wow. So a lot speaks to me. But I don't have any one sort of guiding light. I just, you know, try and you know, plough my own path.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so as I said earlier, we recorded some of your music. So if you want, we can give one of them a listen. And
Yeah, sure.
What was the first one that we recorded?
So the first track we recorded was a song called James Mason.
Mm-hmm.
And this is from my new album called Days of Shaking. And it's a song, it's got quite an interesting story. I do a podcast, a local history podcast called the Clifftown Podcast. And there was an episode where I was trying to find the HMS Beagle, which is the boat that took Charles Darwin around the world when he was developing his ideas about evolution and ultimately what became his book, The Origin of Species. And I found out, someone told me in a pub that that the boat had actually been bought by the customs, and it had been stationed in Pagglesham, which is about 5 miles north of Southend, where I'm from. And so I went in search of that, and I looked up the history of Pagglesham, this tiny little fishing village. And one of the things I found out was that it was mentioned in a Warren Beatty film, a Hollywood film from the late 70s called Heaven Can Wait. So I watched this film, and one of the actors, James Mason, the late great James Mason, a classical English actor, he sort of visited me in dreams. You know, when you watch something, you're exposed to something quite a lot, and your brain sort of filters it out. Well, James Mason started coming and visiting me in dreams. So I wrote this song about James Mason and put it on the new record.
Wow, that's very interesting. Yeah. So let's give it a listen, and then we can talk about it a bit more afterwards if you want. Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
I came here to sing you a song about how we are all not just destined for dust. We have hearts that can sing in small towns. I imagine a land with no houses. Things we long to find in the dark, in our sleep at night, dressed in a different skin. We all hope for love to let us see. We walk through a forest of dead trees. Before us, a cabin with warmth abound, walls hung with phosphor and cupboards full of love. Night can fall whichever way it wants. Things we long to find in the dark, in our sleep at night, dressed in a different skin. We all hope for love to let us see. James Mason visits in a dream, his presence strangely comforting. Why this actor and not some other? In stage whisper he says to me, you're not destined for dust. You're not destined for dust. We are all not just destined for dust.
When it comes to songwriting, how do you generally approach it? would you say that it's something that comes quite naturally, or is it something that you have to work at?
So I feel like I'm writing songs all the time. My brain is always on, and things come to me at the most inopportune times. And what I do is I keep a notebook. So ideas and thoughts come to me, and I try and capture them in the moment, because that's inspiration. And once the inspiration's gone, it's like a lightning bolt. It's gone. You get it only one go at it. And then I think beyond the inspiration, you have craft. So once you're inspired to write a song, there's then various techniques and approaches and fine tuning that you can add to it. And I think my approach to songwriting is I'm always inspired. I always get inspiration, and I try and capture that. And then when I have time, I'll go away and I'll work on what I've got in terms of inspiration and try and build it into something interesting. And I think for me, songs, I want to write songs that I find interesting, and songs that have a little bit of me in the song. So I always feel like I reveal a little bit of my soul in every song that I write. And I think if I was to just write a song, if you told me write a song about, I don't know, this room, I could do it, but I probably wouldn't be very invested in it, because I don't want to write about this room yet. Maybe another time. So I suppose that's how I write songs. So I have notebooks. I've been writing in notebooks since 1997. So I have a whole shelf at home of all my scribblings. And I'm just a conduit. I think it just comes through me, and then I try and put form to it and release it.
Yeah, very nice. So you've got a new album, yes?
Yes. Yeah.
Days of Shaking. Yes.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the recording side of that, and the new song that we just heard, what's usually the process behind that? Like, do you usually do it in a home studio or a professional recording studio environment? Yeah,
so the last few records I've done, I've recorded it in particular studios. So I work with a producer and a group of musicians who live all over the country. So we tend to go into a place, a residential studio, because I think it gives you focus, because I can't call 5 or 6 different people in all together for very long. So if I can provide a place for us all to meet for 5 days, we'll do that. So the last record, Days of Shaking, was recorded at Red Kite Studios in sort of West Wales. And the way I've recorded the last couple of albums is we do it very naturally. So we don't record to a metronome. So it's me, I'm the linchpin. So I'll go into my booth and I will generally sing and play guitar at the same time. Right. And we capture that. And as you know, Sam, that can be quite hard, getting that balance of acoustic and vocal at the same time without getting bleed and separating it. And then the band will generally play live. So pretty much all my albums are live takes. Right. And then we embellish that, and then we produce that so that it becomes a little bit more nuanced and dynamic. And with Days of Shaking, we actually pared it down. So it was a very acoustic album, and we really wanted to focus on the harmonies. So it was myself, and I was in a little room with about 10 microphones around me, playing my acoustic guitar and singing. And then in another booth, I had 2 wonderful musicians and songwriters in their own right, Lucy Farrell and Harriet Bradshaw, and they did the harmonies. So we sang all the harmonies live. And then the producer was in another room with another guitarist and bass player, who also is a fantastic songwriter from Sheffield called Neil McSweeney. So that's how we approach, and we generally, during the day, if you've got 5 days, we tend to try and record 15 tracks. So we'll get up, we'll sort of have the morning to ourselves, we'll sort of gather about 10:30, 11, we scratch our heads about the first song, we'll work an arrangement, we'll go through it. People will say, oh, you don't play that, and what if you do this, and what if you do that? And then we go for about 3 or 4 takes, and then we get something down. Yeah, okay. So does it end up generally being quite different than the original song? Do you know what I mean? Because do you write it typically just with you and an acoustic guitar? Yeah, so I write solo. So I most of my songs I write on guitar for solo performance, and a lot of my shows are, if I haven't got my band, I'll just be playing on my own. And then when you go in the studio, it gets pulled apart and restitched and various things. And that was a really hard lesson for me to take. I recorded my second album with Wolves, The Lamb Will Lie. I recorded that in Sheffield in about 2012, 2013. And the producer started saying, oh, maybe speed this up. Play this really fast. No, faster than that. Oh, I think you need to change the key. Put your capo on 2 frets up. And I felt really uncomfortable. All of a sudden, this precious song that I had was super fast, unrecognisable. But what I learnt from that process was that you have to serve the song. You're not serving your ideal of what the song should be. So you write it in one way. When you get into the studio, it becomes a different beast, and something doesn't work. So you can't be precious. You have to birth it almost into what it needs to be. Yeah. And sometimes the end product isn't quite what I want it to be. Yeah. But I very much accept that is what it should be.
Right. So in regards to the production side of things, how involved do you get in that aspect of it?
Yeah, so it's changed over time. So I used to make my own records. I used to record in a home studio in my 20s. So sort of the early noughties, I was producing everything myself, making everything myself, which I enjoyed immensely. And but as things have gone on, I really enjoy people producing me because they come in with their own ideas and concepts. And I really like that. And I like to be challenged on what I think and what they think. And then you have a sort of happy medium and you can discuss. But generally when we're tracking and we're recording, I very, very much like someone else to be the brain. And I just want to be the performer. I like to perform and I just want to focus on the performance. Yeah. And then once that's done, we listen to it. But we do a lot of pre-production. So I don't just go into a studio cold. I'll tend to write about 25 songs, 30 songs. I'll then take that to the producer and we go, what are we going to make? What album are we going to make? And that's a really important lesson. It's not just about, I've got 10 songs, let's record an album. It's, here's 30 songs. What are the themes? What do you want to be? Because records cost a lot of money to make and produce. So what is it you want to do with it? If all this money is going to go into it, how do you want it to be? So we do a lot of pre-production. We talk about the types of musicians we want on it. We get in touch with those people. We send them demos. We maybe get together over a coffee and do a few recordings so that when we're in the studio, you're not getting any nasty surprise of going, oh, this album doesn't really need drums, and then you've paid for a drummer to be there for 5 days.
Yeah. So would you say that your music has changed a lot over the years?
I don't know. I think you'd probably have to ask other people that. I think for me, I think it's matured, and I think the content and the lyrical detail and content of what I do matures and changes. And I think that's right, because as we as humans age, I think our creative, artistic outlook on life will change. I find that I don't ever feel I've made the perfect record. And therefore every record is a learning point for me. So every time we do a record, I'm like, great, well, it's okay, but the next one's going to be the crystallization of the sort of vision.
But like, if you did make the perfect record, that would be it, right? You would just chuck in the towel, that's it, I'm done.
I don't think I would. What I think would happen is I'd make the perfect record for me, and then I'd be like, I've made it, now I've started, now I've made the first perfect record, now I've got to make a trilogy, the classic period. That's how my mind would work. So I'd be trying to emulate it constantly. So, but I think I'm always writing songs. I still write songs. That well has not dried up, and so therefore in my mind I will always keep recording, because I need to have these things down. I need to have them codified and out in the world and off my brain.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I think that's great that you've got that constant flow of inspiration you're able to do that, because that is quite a difficult thing. I know me personally, like I go through stages of creativity and then it's lulls and like, do you ever get much of that?
Yeah, and I think I was just going to say that I think that's a natural approach. I used to, whenever I release an album, the period after the release, I write no songs and I panic all the time. I panic, and years ago I used to panic. Oh, I'm never going to write a decent song ever again. It's done. And you have to accept that, like, not writing is also part of the process. If you were writing constantly, you'd just be writing the same thing. So you need pauses, you need changes of direction, changes of thought patterns and environment, so that you can produce something fresh and new. So, and there's an author called M. John Harrison, a science fiction author, and he wrote an anti-memoir a couple of years ago called I Wish I Was Here, I think it's called. And in that he talks about writer's block, and he says if you've got writer's block but you're trying to write, then you are writing. It's part of the process. Whereas if you have completely stopped and you've got writer's block and you're not writing and you're just mowing the grass or whatever, then you've stopped. And that's the same for me. When I'm not writing songs, I'm still writing, but I'm just not producing songs that I like. And I'm just like, oh, I'm never going to write something again. And then you look 6 months later, you look back and all those songs you didn't like and you thought weren't working, out of the 10 of them, maybe 2 of them, you're like, oh, actually, they're quite good. And they might end up on the next record. So forever chipping away, you're going to get somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting, because that's, as I say, that's definitely something that I've struggled with over the years. That feeling of I'm never going to write again.
Yeah, you just got to go easy on yourself.
Yeah,
you just got to accept it.
I think that's it's good advice. You run a songwriting retreat, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, can you tell me a little bit about how that got started?
Yeah, so I'm quite cynical. I think. If you'd asked me sort of 5-6 years ago, I would have just said, well, songwriting is just individual. You can't teach it. It's inspiration. It comes from within. And then I was invited by a friend of mine, Jenny Sturgeon, who's a songwriter based on the Shetland Isles. And she invited me to do this songwriting workshop that she was facilitating. And I enjoyed it so much, because what I thought I was teaching was just like, well, no one's going to be interested in this. And people really enjoyed it. And then the people I met there, from all walks of life, all types of songs and what they wanted from music, was just so rewarding. So I established my own school, as it were, and it's called Songwriter's House. And I've co-established it with Harriet Bradshaw, who's a singer-songwriter who plays with me and plays with other people and releases her own music. And we established this retreat, and we call it a one-day retreat, and we just invite people to come along, and we go through, at the first hour, we do this subconscious prompt writing. So we give them an exercise and we go, just write, don't think, just write, don't think about what you're trying to write. And after that hour, everyone has all these great words and ideas and thoughts, and then for the rest of the day we hone in on that and we craft it, and there's time for people to go away and write, because that's really important as well when you're doing a songwriting workshop, is to actually to give people time to process what they're thinking. And it's just a really enjoyable day, and if anyone's listening that really likes songwriting and feels that they're stuck or wants a fresh perspective, do follow Songwriter's House, because we also do a bi-monthly newsletter where we send out tips and prompts. So even if you don't come along, it's a good thing to be part of, to sort of kickstart you into writing songs.
Yeah, it sounds fantastic. Yeah, so should we give another one of your songs a listen?
Yeah.
Yeah, so what was the second one that we recorded?
So this song is called The Hotel at Midnight, which is also off Days of Shaking. And it's a song inspired by a very late night arrival at a Premier Inn when I was on tour a couple of years ago, deep in February, I remember. And I was walking down this corridor and I couldn't remember where I was. I was so tired, couldn't remember where I was or what I was doing. But I knew I was in a Premier Inn somewhere, and I felt like a ghost in the corridors at night. So I wrote a song, sort of like an imaginary song about, imagine if there was a ghost roaming around the hotel at night.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. Sounds interesting. Let's give it a listen, yeah?
I've been walking the hotel at midnight when all the corridors are bare. I move so quiet, nobody knows I'm there. The ballroom unlit and the breakfast hall, the table's set but no one calls. I am an astronaut, my own jewel in the dark. If only I could close my eyes. Godspeed the rider in the night. He has hard yards and is yet to find. So bends the road, so turns the knife. Wait till the morning. Distant youth wants to be known. Daylight was different, how it shone like Aztec gold on young skin in the grass. And now I stand, the drinks machine hums, the only drone in this silence. Hello, nocturne. If only I could close my eyes. Godspeed the rider in the night. He has hard yards and is yet to find. So bends the road, so turns the knife. Wait till the morning. Here comes a car parked on. Guests collect by the welcome doors. Moving on, but in a quiet room under clean sheets, our ghosts whisper themselves to sleep. Godspeed the rider in the night. He has hard yards and is yet to find. So bends the road, so turns the knife. Wait till the morning.
Do you feel it's important to be associated to a specific genre of music, like in terms of like the audience's perspective?
I think if you want to get any traction, I think sadly you have to be, when you're starting out and when you get into a career, I think you have to be something, because audiences want to know what you are. So if you're going to do jazz and metal and pop, then your audience is going to be not know what they're going to come and see, and so you're not going to get that traction. So yeah, I think it is important from a career perspective to be something, and then obviously you can then change within that variance. And people certainly, myself, you look at more sort of chameleon-like musicians, But they're big artists, and they have, their following is so huge that they can afford to be that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you have to be something to begin with.
Yeah. So, do you play any other instruments outside of the guitar?
I do. So I play lap and pedal steel guitar, which is like a country and western instrument for those that may not know what that is. So anything that's country and western, you hear that sort of twangy guitar, and you may see on the TV someone sitting down at a sort of which looks like a thick guitar neck, playing with a steel bar and fingerpick. So I play one of those. I play a bit of banjo and mandolin as well. So
yeah. So do you ever incorporate them into your records?
I do. Yeah. So I play pedal steel on pretty much all my records. If you've listened to my stuff and you hear that sort of swooshy electric guitar sound, that'll be a pedal or a lap steel. I also play pedal and lap with other musicians, and that's brought me a lot of work and a lot of experiences and adventures over the years playing that. So yeah, I do.
Yeah. So was most of that self-taught, was it? Or was it?
Yeah. So the pedal steel is a hard instrument to get lessons for, because very few people play it. I'm really lucky that growing up, about 5 streets down from where I live was one of the best pedal steel players in the country, which is a guy called Vic Collins, who used to play with a band called the Kersal Flyers back in the 70s. And I had a few lessons with Vic, like 2 or 3 lessons, but yeah, mainly it was self-taught, and and I'm by no means an expert on it. I'm definitely not one of the Nashville greats. Let's just put it that way. But I love playing it, and it's an enjoyable instrument.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's definitely nice to get a different type of sound.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, do you ever do any like collaboration work with other musicians and things like that?
Yeah, I think that's a really important part of what I do, because I think music, for me, has always been about friendship. It's you're sharing your music with people who you want to know and enjoy, and you want to play music with people you know and enjoy. So I have a band who are fantastic, and I collaborate with them on my own music. But in terms of songwriting, I collaborate with one of my long-term collaborators, a fantastic songwriter called Samantha Waits, who we've released a couple of EPs together. In fact, we're up in Scotland in a couple of weeks recording a new album. So I've collaborated with Samantha, again Jenny Sturgeon, who I mentioned earlier, and I play with John Bowden, who's a folk singer who people might know from a band called Bellowhead. I'm in his solo band.
Yeah, I believe I saw them at a festival once.
Yeah, you probably did.
It was. I think it was quite a small. It might have been Pontardawe Festival or something. A small festival in Wales. Yeah, but that was a while. That's going back.
Yeah, they've been going for a long time.
Yeah.
And then I used to collaborate with an American songwriter called Simon Felice. About 10 years ago, I went on a tour with him and made some records. So yeah, I'm always working with other people.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great thing, because it's always nice to get influences from other people and an outside perspective, Would you say that that's more of your natural way of songwriting, like collaboratively, or is it generally on your own?
I think collaboration is anti-natural for me, or
right.
Unnatural, I suppose, is the proper English. But yeah, I like writing on my own. I want to write songs on my own. Yeah. It's very, as I said earlier, it's very personal. I leave a bit of my soul in them, and then when you collaborate, you don't necessarily expose yourself as much, but it's a different type of songwriting. So it brings things out that you wouldn't normally write. When you write your song. When you write with someone else, they're going to bring how they write songs together, or to the session. So when you write together, rather, you've got this hybrid of working. So you have a completely different sounding song to what you would have done on your own. Yeah. And I like both. But when you collaborate, for me personally, I think songwriters and listening to this might agree, you're less precious because you have to work together, so you have to have some sort of conversation to allow it to progress.
Yeah, you work with some students and things like that, right?
Yeah.
And like, what would be your advice in order to get
Yeah.
into performing or songwriting or anything like that?
I think my two main bits of advice would be, firstly, quality will out. You know, if you write good songs and you sing well and you sing good songs, people will be naturally drawn to you. People that like listening to music will be drawn to you.
Mhm.
So whatever you're doing, whatever genre of music, make sure it's the best it can be, and that your performance develops. You're probably not going to go on stage and be the best performer in the world, but keep to it and develop it to a point that you can put on a good performance. And I think my second bit of advice is find your voice. I spent many, many years, we were saying earlier, I didn't start properly performing till I was in my early 20s, mid-20s.
Mm-hmm.
And before then, I didn't really know what I wanted. I enjoyed writing songs, but I was just writing whatever came along in my head. And I think if you're starting out in songwriting, try and get your voice. What sort of songwriter do you want to be? Do you want to be a protest singer, or do you want to sing? Do you want to sing ballads about love, or do you want to sing hard-edged, heavy rock? Whatever you want to do, hone that. Make sure it sits with your soul and it's right for you.
Yeah.
In other words, don't pretend to be something because that's what other people are doing or that's what you think will be good. Do what your soul wants to do, and that will then mean that when you're on stage and you're singing the stuff that's in your soul and from your soul and of your soul, it'll be authentic, and people pick up on that. People pick up when someone means what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's great advice. Yeah.
Thank you.
So you do some music videos, right?
Oh yes, try.
How do you generally come up with your ideas and concepts for music videos? I really liked Quiet. The collage style. I thought that was really good.
So I think aesthetic is really important. I think you have to present an image of your music that resonates with what the music is, and it's a message, isn't it? It's an advert to people to say, this is the sort of music that you like, you should listen to this. I'm incredibly uncomfortable shooting films. I really don't enjoy them. I'm happy to stand up in front of people and perform in a formal performance environment, but to busk or to perform in a street while someone's filming me makes me feel deeply uncomfortable. And so I try and avoid as much as I can when I have to do a music video, performing in public. I don't, in the sort of general public. But Quiet came about. There's a fantastic artist called Adam Gardner based in Southend, and I first met Adam quite some years ago, and he offered to make a music video for a song off an EP that I released in about 2017, 2018 called Blood Moon. And I went to his studio and he filmed me performing. And it was just really great. And we kept in touch, and he did a few posters for me. And he's a great creative mind. And when the new album was being made, Adam got in contact and said, look, I've got a great idea for this video. So it's a video of me walking around just generally. And then what Adam did was he then took every single still from that film, photocopied it, or printed it, and then he did artwork, and he works with a lot of students, and they created all this artwork, and then he feeds it back into the machine, speeds it up so it comes back to video again. And so what you have is this video of me walking around with all this ever-changing artwork around me, and it was absolutely fantastic. I mean, the hours put into that was many, and I think if he didn't have sort of 50 students working on it with him, I don't think he would have ever finished it. But I love it. I think it's my favourite music video I've ever been part of.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed that. Yeah. So you mentioned a little bit about busking there. Is that something that you ever do? I know you said you didn't like being filmed whilst busking, but is that not something you've ever?
I've never done it. it. I wouldn't mind doing it. I mean, busking is part of a formal performance anyway. You just stand there and you perform. But I don't really play a lot of cover songs. I love music, and I play songs of other people's in the privacy of my own home. But I very rarely release or perform them, and so busking's not something that I've generally jump to.
Right, okay. Did you ever perform at the Railway in Southend?
I did many times. Yes,
because that was quite a iconic place, and I think a lot of local musicians really enjoyed that. What were your experiences like?
So I think I started playing in Southend. I'm trying to think when I was 15. So I was performing in Southend from the sort of latter part of the 90s. And there was a lot more venues, and the main sort of venue I played that I enjoyed immensely was the Ship Hotel, which is down in the Old Town in Leigh-on-Sea. And they used to have a function room upstairs, and they used to put on some really big acts, certainly in the world music genre. They used to have some amazing people come down and perform. And it was a really nice venue. And then, of course, over the time, a lot of venues have just shut. And then the Railway in Southend was this sort of, I suppose, the last bastion of that sort of live pub music sort of heritage that we had. And I played there many times. There used to be a club night there called Shangri-La, and I used to play that every week, lap steel, with various people, and that must have been 2000 and 2010, 2009 maybe, and it was. The pub was very quiet then, and it sort of grew in popularity. It was always a great night. Yeah, it was always a lovely crowd.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the vibe that it had.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just interesting to see how many different musicians as well that I've spoken to. Of most of them actually have performed there one way or the other. So yeah, it was great. So. What was the last song that we recorded of yours?
So that was a song called Clifftown, which was the self-titled album from 2021 that I released, called Clifftown, and it's a themed album about Southend actually. So it was I'd written a lot of songs, and when we came to make an album, there was this really common thread of sort of suburban seaside life, and so we decided, amongst my producer and myself, that we would try and make this themed album called Clifftown. So Clifftown is sort of encapsulates all the ideas that I wanted to convey in the album. So it's a nice starter to that album.
All right, brilliant. All right, let's give it a listen, yeah?
Kids grow up to a lawnmower drone. Their kids grow old, move away from home. By seafront palisades they're swapping smokes before they're gone. London stretches her fingers out. All these planes fly away from the roof of my house. I watch their bellies ascend, all these options we're dying to find out. Praise the Lord of Silver, He moves faster than I could ever hope to fly. Meanwhile in the city on Tower Hill, the taxi men, they park in single file. They're hungry for fares and they park bumper to tail light. They watch mini TVs with tired eyes. City boys in their Sunday best, drunk on status, hiding behind mobile phones. Did they know beneath their feet lie the bones of boy kings killed by men long ago? It's in the hum of the heating, the frost in the museum waiting to thaw in the sun. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Praise the Lord of silver. He moves faster than I ever hope to fly. The co-op plays an Elvis song. Sunday nights it's the only shop open. Kids working aimlessly the aisles like zombies, waiting for their lives to start. And the sliding doors, they chatter apart, as if they're speaking directly to my heart. Leave this town, you have your chance. But I slip through them and out into the dark.
So when did you write that song? Sorry, Clifftown?
So I probably wrote that song around 2018, 2019.
Okay.
Well, no, actually before then, because we recorded it in 19, released in 21. So I probably wrote it about 2018, early 2018.
All right. You've also got a Clifftown podcast. As you say.
Yes, yeah.
But it's not music as such.
No, so when we did the Clifftown album, there was this idea that as part of the promotion, I could do a podcast about history, because I'm really into my history, and I kind of was a bit nervous about doing it. I didn't really want to talk to people that I didn't know about subjects that I didn't really know about.
Mm-hmm.
But it was lockdown, and so I had nothing else to do, and everybody else had nothing else to do, so people were quite keen to talk to me. And so I started this podcast, and I did 10 episodes and 10 sort of bonus episodes, and it was just so enjoyable. And I found so many things out about Southend that you wouldn't expect. You know, I met this guy who had this theory that because Harry Houdini performed in Southend.
Oh, really?
And
Yeah.
he performed in the yacht club down on the seafront, and then he performed in a theatre which is now, or would have been, on South Church Road. And supposedly he did his water torture trick, you know, where he goes in all chained up upside down in a water tank. Supposedly that was invented in Southend for him, and the people that made the water tank were based in Southend. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But there were little stories like that came out, bubbled up from all these meetings that I had and all this research I did. And I did a second series, and they're all on Spotify and all those places. And then I've now got a Patreon where I do more episodes that I work on. So actually only a couple of weeks ago I was on the Essex border with Suffolk, looking at a graveyard of barges, sailing barges, because I'm doing an episode on the sort of the history of the sailing barge around the Essex coast.
All right.
Exciting for some.
Yeah, no, it sounds very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. What extent would you say that social media plays a part in you putting your music out there?
Social media is all important. It's such a shame, because I think the only way you can reach people now is through social media on a large scale. So if you're playing a show, I don't know, in Leeds, you know, there's not many ways for you to contact people in Leeds other than to go through the social media and target groups and things like that. I mean, obviously leafleting and posters still work to an extent, but you know, you've got to have a developed logistics for that and people willing to do that in venues or promoters. But social media is really, really important. And I think it's a shame, because I think what social media has done to some extent is it focuses on content rather than quality. And I think there's a lot of musicians and artists that I know that, you know, running themselves ragged, creating content. I've got to post a photo, I've got to post a picture, I've got to tell people what I'm doing. And if you don't, you sort of cease to be relevant for a week or a year or whatever. And then these social media platforms then, you know, they charge you. You know, if you're running a business or you're trying to promote things, they want to get money from you, so they restrict who sees what you post unless you pay them to expand that. So it very much is a product, and I it has its benefits, does it? Don't get me wrong, but yeah, it's a tough arena, I think, for most.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Like, because in regards to this podcast, it's something that I don't like getting too stuck into. Like, I obviously it's a necessary evil. It's something you've got to do, and you've got to put this stuff out there if people are going to listen to it. But at the same time, I mean, I think it's important not to get too bogged down by numbers and all of that side of things.
100%.
Do you know what I mean? But as I say, there definitely are positives, and it's because there's a huge audience out there that obviously wouldn't necessarily hear your music or this podcast or whatever otherwise.
Absolutely, yeah.
So yeah. So with that in mind, where on social media is the best place to find your music?
Well, I'm still quite old-fashioned, so I'm still on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, and I do the other one, Twitter, X. So I'm always on there. I also have a Patreon, which you can join for free. And it's kind of like an old-style fan club. So it's a website that you can join, and you can, I put essays. I write essays and diary entries, and I make other podcasts, and I put it all on there for people to enjoy. And I find that quite an enjoyable interface because it's less. There's no adverts, and it's people that join because they want to hear about my music. And I'm on Spotify and all that, but you can also buy my records. You can actually have a physical copy if you want.
Yeah. All right. Brilliant. So, do you have any gigs and things lined up? And if so, like, where's the best place for people to find your gig listings?
Yeah. So I'm gigging all over the place. So in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be in Cheshire. So if people are listening in Cheshire, come to Davenham Theatre on the 29th of November, or Nantwich on the 30th of November at Apple Stump Records. And then for more local audiences, I'm actually playing the Dixon Studio at the Palace Theatre for Chris Robson's pin drop sessions on the 15th of December. It's a Sunday. And that's almost becoming a tradition. And then next year, I've got lots of gigs all over the country. And so I'm out and about. And you can find that on my website, which is mgboulter.co.uk.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, so that pin drop sessions is a completely acoustic gig, right?
It is, yes.
Yeah. So how do you find that?
I knew you were going to ask me that.
Yeah.
Do you know what? It's really hard. I like playing acoustically unplugged. It's fine. I have no problems with that. But playing unplugged in a venue is really hard. It's a really hard skill because you have to balance your voice and your guitar and your projection. And I've done the pin drop for Chris for the last few years, and I love the gig, but it is hard. It's a challenge, and it's I much prefer to be plugged in because it gives you more power, and you don't have to force yourself into the room. But it's part and parcel of what we do. So it'll be a great show.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be brilliant. Yeah,
thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much for coming on. I really appreciate it. It's been fantastic. I really enjoyed your music. It was really nice to hear. So,
well, thank you, Sam. I've enjoyed myself too.
Yeah, no problem. We'll have to do it again sometime down the line when you've got your next album out.
Absolutely, I'd love to.
Yeah, sounds great. Cheers. So that was MG Boulter. If you're a musician or a band from the southeast of England and would like to be on the podcast, then just email me at the address below and I'll get back to you. Thanks for watching.